Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. My name is Jackson Mumey, and each week we'll be bringing you updated information about the bar exam and what you need to do in order to make the next bar exam your last bar exam. Ready to get started? Let's jump to it. Hey everybody, welcome. Today is Wednesday, November 9th, and I'm all alone. June is traveling today, so you just get me, which is a terrifying thought, but I'm glad you're here. If you're with us live, glad to have you with us. And if you're watching on replay, great. We're glad to have you with us that way as well. And if you're watching or listening for the podcast, we are glad to have you here as well. We are just turning the corner into this beginning of the February 2023 exam. And I thought today we'd do a kind of an Ask Me Anything in the chat box as well as that I've received during the week. And we'll just take those questions and deal with them. But I think the studying is beginning to get real for a lot of you, and that's good news. I wanted to talk about California. California results should be coming out next week, and that's always a big time. If you're a California student and you're in our course, if you're successful, yay, we would love to have you join me for an interview and to tell the world about your success. If you're not successful, you don't have a lot of time to get ready. So you're going to have to make that switch pretty quickly, and your course will stay enabled for you, so that's not a problem. But you're able to get going. Now, I'd like to see your score reports as quickly as you can get them to me, and then I will do a personalized video for you in terms of my recommendations and suggestions for you. That is just a process we're going to follow. I'm not going to have a lot of time to recover, and then we're going to be right into the holidays. So if you're a California student and you don't get a favorable result, you got to jump right in. Now, if you're listening to this later, as part of our podcast, and you're a California bar taker with another course, you get your results, please contact us immediately. We'll be glad to help you and get you started on our course and get underway. There is enough time, and I want to make this point, there's enough time for a California retaker to get ready for the February exam. You can absolutely do it, but time is ticking now, and it's our enemy. And so if you've been thinking about getting started in any of our courses and you haven't done it, this is the time to get underway. And I really encourage you to do that. All right, so that's what we've got going on with California. California is the last of the jurisdictions to produce results, going all the way back to July of 2022. So it's a long process to get through that, but we are just about done, and I'm ready to be done with 2022. All right, let's see. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the changes in cut scores for the UBE. And if you're not a UBE student, just bear with me for a minute. But the UBE is now up to 41 jurisdictions, which is pretty amazing. So there's 41 jurisdictions, and then we cover Florida, Georgia, and California. So that gets us to 44. And frankly, if you add Nevada, it's basically a UBE jurisdiction, and Wisconsin is basically a UBE jurisdiction. So that gets us to 46. So 46 out of 50 states, not bad. In any event, in the 41 UBE jurisdictions, we now have some changes to the cut scores or the passing scores. And I wanted to update you on what's going on there. The pass scores range from 260 to 280. And if you're putting California into perspective, California would be a 278. So pretty high score that you would need to pass. Florida would be at a 272. Georgia would be a 270. So those are all pretty tough states based on that standard. But if you go from 260 to 280, jurisdictions at the 270 mark. So the majority of jurisdictions for the UBE are now at 270, and that includes Colorado, which just changed their cut score and reduced it down to 270. They had a ridiculously high cut score, I think. And frankly, I'm in Colorado right now, and I don't know why anybody would want to go through all of that to be a member of the bar in Colorado with such a high score. So I'm glad they dropped it. I think it's perfectly reasonable. In any event, we've got 17 jurisdictions that would include Massachusetts, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Ohio, Oregon, Texas, and now Colorado among that group. Then the next biggest cluster is at 266. This is the number that you need in Connecticut, DC, Illinois, New York, New Jersey. So that's the big number. The one that we see a lot of is the 266, and we've got 12 jurisdictions there. Then the next is we've got 5 jurisdictions at 260. That's the minimum score. And those are Alabama, Minnesota, Missouri, New Mexico, and North Dakota. Now, the reason I mention those is because I think that what happens is that you really have to think about those jurisdictions. If you get a 261 or 262 and you were aiming for a 266 in New York, for example, you can still waive into some of these states. And so Alabama, Minnesota, Missouri, New Mexico, and North Dakota, those are all good places to start your legal career. And then finally, we've got 4 jurisdictions in the UBE with scores above 270, which is crazy. Idaho and Pennsylvania are 272, Arizona is 273, and Alaska is 280. So I guess if you want to go freeze, you've also got to get the highest score. So there you go. So that's what we've got in the way of scores. I see some comments in the chat box about that. Let me deal with that. The question of score of 272, how many correct questions does that translate to? There's no way to answer that. It's both multi-state and essay. So basically in most jurisdictions, what you do is you divide by half. So 136 in that example. And if you're trying to get a 136 on the multi-state, it's about 125 to 130 raw questions correct. You can also find that information in the course introductions. So make sure you check that out as well. So that's where we stand on the UBE. There's lots of changes coming along the way, but the cut scores are the things that we want to watch and be aware of. So that's the information there. And then last, I want to talk about virtual bootcamp. We've got a new product that we call Virtual Bootcamp. It is the resources that we used in our live bootcamp that we just finished up in Florida a few weeks ago. And we're adding new resources to it all the time. If you are a bootcamp alum, you get membership in that course automatically. And if you haven't gotten in, just contact us and let us know. But I think we've got all of you in there now. And that's your gift. And as we continue to build and add resources, we'll put them in there. If you are not a photo reader and you'd like to be a photo reader, you can join the virtual bootcamp and get your photo reading course included with that. If you're already a photo reader and you want to join virtual bootcamp, we will credit you the price of your photo reading against your virtual bootcamp cost. Now, virtual bootcamp's got all sorts of resources dealing with how to use photo reading for essay writing, for multiple choice, and for performance tests. And we're adding new things to it each week. Make sure you check that out and participate. You'll find the link to Virtual Bootcamp to order it on our website. Just look at the top and there's a section that says Bootcamp, and that will link you, and you can pay in full or over an 8-month period. A couple of different choices there with Virtual Bootcamp. All right. Let's go ahead and deal with questions that I got during the week, and we will try and get through as many of those as we can. First question actually had to deal with Virtual Bootcamp, and it said, for those who attended the live boot camps, are we allowed to get Virtual Bootcamp, and what's the cost? And the answer is yes. You are automatically enrolled in Virtual Bootcamp. There's no cost to you if you went to the live boot camp. So there you go. You're already set. Next question. Student said, I had a good start with my studies, but I stopped for a couple of weeks because my family was about to go back to their home country, and I decided to spend a little more time with them, which was great. And I know that when I originally enrolled in the program, I needed to study about 3 hours a day to complete it. So my question is, how many hours a day should I dedicate myself to studying in order to be ready for the February test? Based on where we are in the calendar right now, if you're just starting today, November 9th, I would say that you probably are going to be going 20 to 25 hours a week from now until the bar exam. Now, that can vary. There may be weeks, and there certainly will be weeks during the holidays when you may be able to get a lot more done, and there may be times when you can't get quite as much done, but that's the average that we're looking for. As we get further along in the cycle, that 20 to 25 hours obviously starts to go 25 to 30, and then 30 to 35, and then, 35 on up as we get really closer to the exam if you're just starting out. So I would say that the good benchmark is that 20 to 25. Now, if you've been studying for a while, I don't want you to suddenly think you got to ramp up and do a whole lot more. If you've been studying and you can stay at 15 to 20 hours a week, I think you're just fine. And we'll talk more about benchmarks as we get further along. You'll get emails from me as we hit each benchmark in the course, giving you a sense of where I think you should be. In addition to that, if you're not clear on what you should be doing or where you should be doing or how many hours you should be spending, I would really encourage you to jump on a group coaching call. It's a great place to get an answer to that question and to talk to other people in real time and just see where you are. And then the final thing I would say is that Brianna's time management workshop is an incredible resource. Everybody that's been through it just raves about it. Brianna actually helps you create your own study schedule, and she is a master at doing that. So I would encourage you to check that out. You can find that resource in your course in the Upgrade Center. So just check that out, and you can schedule that session with Brianna. It's one-on-one, and she puts it all together for you. So really a great way to do that. So again, about 20 to 25 hours a week right now is what I'd like to see you doing. Next question that we have is, I've marked on my calendar for 15th to see where I am in the study. And at that time, I'll know what I need in order to approach you, Jackson, for coaching if I need it at that time. Is that time frame too late to add coaching? And the answer is no. You can add coaching with me pretty much up through early January. You can start that process. So we'll see where I am in terms of my ability. I want to make sure that everybody can get to me. I've done this now for over 30 years, so I'm pretty good at setting the schedule. But I want to make sure that there's enough opportunity to talk with me. So I'll continue to take new coaching upgrades and new students through the end of December, and then we'll see where we are in early January. But typically in January and February, I don't do a whole lot other than talk to students. So as long as we can find enough slots so that it's convenient for you, you can continue to do that. We'll let you know when we actually shut down the opportunity for upgrades. But if you're thinking about an upgrade, this is a pretty good time to do it. My schedule is still relatively open, and it's really easy to schedule a conference with me. We do these conferences one-on-one. They're Zoom calls. We record them and send them back to you when we're done so you can review them. And I think they're really valuable. And we certainly see the impact when we look at the student results on the exam. The people that we coach and work with tend to do better, particularly when they're in a retake mode, than the ones that are trying to figure this out on their own. So if you've been thinking that you want to do this on your own, that's fine. The instruction is all there. But if you're struggling with how to do the writing, whether it's essays or performance tests, I would really encourage you to check out an upgrade to coaching with me. Again, you'll find that in the Dates Center, and do first come, first serve. So there you go. All right. Next question was an administrative kind of question. Where are the mind map lectures in the photo reading course? I think they're at the very bottom of the photo reading course. You just have to scroll all the way down to the last couple of units. They're the bonus items, and that's where you want to look for those. If you're really struggling and you're lost, just shoot us an email or send an email to June, and she will help you find what you're missing. All right. And by the way, you should be doing mind mapping. Everybody should be mind mapping, in my view. It makes such a big difference, I think, in your note taking. I just did an interview with a successful UBE student from Mexico. And one of the things that he talks about is the value of mind mapping. He thought that BarMaps, the product that we offer that's got the pre-made mind maps in it, was an incredible help. He also loved Brianna's time management coaching. So there you go, a couple of different things that you can check out. But mind mapping is important. All right. Next question also had to do with photo reading and the virtual bootcamp. This student said, I just purchased the virtual bar prep bootcamp. Great. Glad to have you there. And I also have the Florida bar exam success course. So my question is, how do I go about doing both courses and incorporating the two into one? Should I be doing them simultaneously or working on them individually? And the answer is you should be working on them simultaneously. And the way that you do that is to begin with the photo reading instruction. That's an hour lesson each day for 8 days while you're doing your bar study. So if you've got 3 hours of bar study set up for the day, you do one of those hours for photo reading to do the lesson, and then a couple of hours in your bar study. It only takes 8 hours to get through photo reading. And once you've done that, you're totally integrated into the course. But truthfully, I think most photo readers would tell you that after about assignment 3 or 4 in photo reading, they're really able to do the photo reading process for their studies for the bar. So you'll integrate it even faster than that. I think that's the way you do it. The point I really want to make is you don't stop your bar study to learn how to photo read. I get a lot of people who start with photo reading and feel overwhelmed. And so they think, I've got to learn how to photo read before I can do the bar study. No, it really doesn't work that way. You just jump in, you start working it, and after 3 or 4 of the photo reading lessons, you're in a position where you can start applying it to your bar study. And if you're in virtual boot camp, you've got all of that information and more to work with. So just think of it as an additional resource for you as you get further along. And we'll also send you some emails as a photo reader as to different resources and times and things you should be doing. But the sooner you get into photo reading, the better from my standpoint. Okay. Next question. This student said, I'm interested in mind mapping and how it works. I think that mind mapping, as I said, is the way to go here. Mind mapping can be done on a computer. We recommend a program called Meister.com, and I would encourage you to check that out. If you want to handwrite your mind maps, you can certainly do that. Or you can take our mind maps and modify them. Lots of different choices there. And BarMaps, again, is one of the products we've got where we've created mind maps for every subject in your exam. And you'll find that link in your upgrade center. How does mind mapping work? It gives you this visual representation of the material instead of a linear top to bottom. And that visual sense is what helps the non-conscious communicate with the conscious brain. And it helps you learn the material and satisfy your conscious brain. So I think mind mapping is a game changer. We encourage it for all of our students. And really, it's something you can do. It's just a difference in your note-taking technique. I see some questions here about photo reading in the chat box. I will get to those as well. Let me get through some of these one or two more other questions here I want to get to first. We had a former student, an alum, who said, I've got some good opportunities that have opened up for me in California or Nevada. This student says, I'm pretty sure I could pass the exam in Nevada, and I think they could. But they said, I'm curious about the exam in California. How much additional studying or assistance would I need if I took the Cal bar? Let me just say, Cal is the toughest state in the country by far, not just because of the cut score. It's a tough one. It's really a 90 in California, which translates, because they multiply everything by 10. It's really a 139. And if you're looking at that's not all that much different than Florida that requires a 136. They're getting closer in that range. Georgia would be a 135 in essence. So you can see where that sort of fits in. New York would be a 133 if you're trying to figure that all out. So California is definitely tougher. The other part that makes California so tough is it's 5 one-hour essays and only one performance test. So the written portion is significant. It's 50% of your score at least, but it's a challenging set of questions. Some of them are California specific, some are more generic, but you never know what the mix is going to be. And then you've got the MBE on day 2. It's a challenge, I think, to take the Cal exam. We have students every year that go in and take it and pass, first time as well as repeat takers. So I'm confident that we can help anyone with that California exam. How much additional studying do you need? I think this is a clear example of 250 to 300 hours total. So you can do that division by the number of weeks you've got, and that'll give you an idea of how many hours you got to study. But basically 250 to 300 hours. And I would recommend assistance, particularly with the essay writing. Again, California is idiosyncratic, and so you got to write in a particular way to satisfy them. And 1-hour essays are different than 30-minute essays from the UBE. So there's some things to check out there. All right, so let me jump back into the chat box here. David wants to know, where would you like us to write positive reviews for your course? Ooh, that's a great question. I'd love them on any of the chat boards. I think there's JD for All. Is that one of them? I think I might be wrong about that, but I think it is. But really, any place where you post, any Reddit group, any Facebook group. You can also send positive comments to us, and we post them in our course, and we appreciate that a great deal. And most of our students do come to us through word of mouth. Love it when people have nice things to say, and we appreciate that. All right, next question is, what should people feel after working with photo reading every day? I have stronger intuition. Should I be feeling that right now? Yeah, photo reading does a lot of things when you're studying. First of all, your dreams may be more active and more vibrant. You may find that you have this intuitive sense of the answers when you're doing multiple choice questions, or the law when you're writing an essay and you don't know exactly why you know it, you just know it. That's the cumulative effect of photo reading. I often say to people that photo reading is not a light switch that you flip on or off as much as a dimmer switch. It tends to start to ramp up. And the more photo reading you do, the repetition you get, the more you're going to have that sense. The way you should feel when you're working with photo reading every day is that you should have a positive expectancy that you're going to know the material, because you do. Paul talks about knobs: notice it, own it, play with it, stay with it. And I think that's a really appropriate guideline here. You want to notice what's happening. That is clearly the intuitive sense, but then own it. Say, this is mine. I got this. I understand this material. I'm really getting it, and it makes sense to me. And I'm confident I'm going to continue to learn it. And then you want to play with photo reading. And this is not super serious. Photo reading works, but you've got to have a little bit of fun with it. It freaks other people out, to be sure, but it's really a great tool. And so take a playful attitude, is what Paul would say, and I would agree. And then the most important part is stay with it. Just don't give up. Too often people have this expectation that they'll get a photographic memory or their conscious brain will be satisfied by this. And neither of those things are true. I wish they had called it something other than photo reading, because it does make you think it's a photographic memory, but it's not really that at all. It's just this deeper knowledge that you're getting and then extracting through the mind maps, through the lectures, through the question practice, and so on. So there's a couple different ways that you can work with that. And I think that's helpful. So NOPS, notice it, own it, play with it, stay with it. That would be my thought. Great question. Thank you very much. All right. Another question having to do with photo reading. Jane said, I feel uncertain about when I photo read because I still second guess my answers on the MBE. Let me stop right there. Don't second guess. The whole idea of selective intuition is that you read the fact pattern and then you think of the answer before you look at any of the answer choices. Then you look to see if one of the answer choices matches what you had thought. If so, mark it and go on. If not, then you're going to have to do a little bit more work. And we've explained that in the selective intuition lecture. But fundamentally, what you're doing is you're starting then to narrow down just a little bit. But you don't second guess, and you definitely don't change answers. So I want to make really clear about that. You've got to trust yourself with photo reading. Jane went on to say, I'm afraid I'm doing photo reading the wrong way and I'm losing confidence. Let me be very clear, Jane, and to anybody else, there is no wrong way to do photo reading. It is a natural phenomenon. Your brain is actually photo reading all the time for you, and it's all going into your non-conscious. Whether you think you're seeing the flip page or you're flipping the pages properly or you're saying the chant properly, whatever it might be, those things really don't affect it at all in terms of what your brain is able to do on its own. So you should be fully confident that photo reading will work and is working, and it's really just a matter of you activating it. So my recommendation to you is what you should be doing in the next coming days is mind mapping, photo reading, watching the lectures, photo reading, doing the practice questions, photo reading, and mind mapping all of that. Just follow through. Whether you think it's working or not actually doesn't matter much because it is working. And you'll start to see the results. But if you start saying to yourself, I've been photo reading for a week now or 2 weeks, and I don't understand it perfectly, and I think I'm making a mistake, and that's a pretty normal reaction, relax, you're fine. The other thing I would tell you is that if you're a photo reader, you're entitled to a conference with me to talk about photo reading, and you can schedule that. And all you have to do is send a note to June, and she will help you if you need the link to schedule. And I'll be glad to talk with you one-on-one about your photo reading. Another question that came up here is, can I explain the power of photo reading and why does it make a difference in the long run? Yeah, the power of photo reading is that you're able to get this material at a deeper level and you're able to get it through repetition. Most of our photo readers will photo read a bar exam outline between 50 and 100 times before they get to the bar exam. That's remarkable, right? Most people will struggle to get through a bar outline once or twice if they even do that. So if you can read it 50 to 100 times, even if you don't think anything's happening, I guarantee you that if you read that outline 100 times, some stuff is going to seep in. So that's part of the power. The other part of the power is that it's giving you this intuitive, deeper knowledge that you can use whether you're in a multiple choice setting or an essay, or even if you're working on a performance test. And so when you start to apply this tool to the bar, it's incredibly powerful. In fact, it's so powerful. I've got people that are doing MCATs and advanced medical training who have come to me for assistance with photo reading because they see how powerful and how effective it is in the bar. When we talk about what makes a difference in the long run, we know that when people try to memorize and cram, when they do things the old-fashioned way, it just doesn't work very well. I was looking at a listing that's going to come out in one of the legal publications about bar review companies, and they had all the bar review companies and their quick write-ups in them. And a couple of things really stood out to me. One is most of the companies are exactly the same. They're doing precisely the same things, and the things that don't work very well, to be candid, and they're charging a lot of money for it, and then pretending that something good is happening. There is no one else using tools like photo reading and paraliminals and mind mapping like we do. And there's no one else that's really letting the power of the whole human brain, not just a part of it, really work for them. So you've got courses saying to people, we've got more flashcards, or we've got more tricks, or we've got more mnemonics, or You should handwrite out every word of every lecture. All of those things are interesting, but I don't think they're as powerful as photo reading ultimately for seeing your scores go up. That's some of what I think is going. And one of the questions I got, 50 to 100 readings for each outline. Is there enough time for that? Yeah, if you're a photo reader, because it takes you, what, 10 minutes to photo read an outline? So yes, absolutely. In fact, at the end of your studies, I'm going to suggest that you photo read all your multi-state outlines 3 times a week and your state outlines 3 times a week. It's actually pretty easy. And when I say 50 to 100, I'm actually being conservative. A lot of you will go way over 100 readings of each outline. So yeah, plenty of time for that. Easy to do it at 10 minutes each. All right, let's see. Another question here. Talk about the paraliminals. David said he bought them and he loves them. That's great. I knew you would. Pretty incredible. What's the value, or how does that relate? And so let me just describe. Paraliminals are audio recordings. There's 2 separate soundtracks in each recording. One is designed to speak to the non-conscious. One is designed to speak to the conscious brain. And they take about 20 to 30 minutes each, and they're focused on specific topics. So stress and anxiety, sleeping well, waking refreshed. There's even that's 10 minutes. It's called 10-minute supercharger, which is great for just recovering and getting your energy back. The beautiful thing about these paraliminals is that they do all the work for you. You just put on your headphones or earbuds, close your eyes, sit in a comfortable chair or lie down on the bed. You'll probably fall asleep at one part of the paraliminals because it's got a sleep learning track, and it's designed to get your brain into the theta brain stage, which is really cool. And then you find yourself waking up as you're hearing Paul say, counting back from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So really, it's almost like being hypnotized. That's a good way to describe it for a lot of people. And it's leaving you with a powerful set of messages around whatever the particular issue or problem is that you're dealing with. And so for me, I use paraliminals 3 or 4 times a day, at night before I go to bed, in the morning when I wake up. Typically in the afternoon, I'll do at least one. There's all these different titles that we've got in our paraliminal pack. We've curated learning strategies and Paul Sheely, 16 of the recordings that we thought were best for bar takers. So you can find that again in your upgrade center. And I love paraliminals, man. I think they are a game changer just because they really remove the blocks that might be existing. So if you're having a block with procrastination, there's one called Get Around to It. So there's a lot of things that help you in that grouping. All right. I think I've caught up with the questions in the chat box. I wanted to wrap up today, though, by talking a little bit about a couple of substantive questions. I said we were going to do an AMA, and a couple of people asked me about substantive questions, so I wanted to get to those if I could. The first was one that came up, I think this was in our community group, and it had to do with a situation in criminal law in which you've got a homicide, but there's the possibility of a manslaughter charge as an underlying crime in felony murder. And essentially, we've got an attempted murder of one person. And then the question is, can that be an underlying felony for the actual murder? So we've got a murderer aiming at party A, they miss, they kill party B. And the question really is, can you have this underlying felony? And the student had asked this question, and I had responded back that what makes it a felony murder was that the intent was to kill the first party that they missed. And if they'd succeeded in killing the first party, then there is no felony murder because they actually killed, in this situation, they killed party B, the second person, and that was not the intended victim. When that circumstance happens, when you see that fact pattern, what happens is the state can charge the defendant with both felony murder and extreme recklessness. So you've got 2 things going on there, and it's an unusual fact pattern. So the question came up is, does that mean that every time that you've got a doctrine of transferred intent, the defendant failed to kill the intended victim, the state could charge with both felony murder and extreme recklessness? And the answer is yes, that is correct. But having said that, I went back and looked, and I couldn't find a fact pattern, an essay example, where that problem came up. And I couldn't find an MBE question where it came up. Now, I may be wrong, and someone may be able to point me to one where there is that particular problem. It's pretty rare. So don't get too wrapped up around this, but understand the concept that when you're trying to kill party A and you miss and you kill party B, there is a possibility of this underlying claim of both felony murder and extreme recklessness. So can happen, but it's an unusual outlier of a fact pattern. So again, when you're trying to figure these things out, my strong advice to you is find an actual question or an MBE or a fact pattern in an essay. Don't try and make up your own hypos, because in doing that, you may come up with a wonderful hypo, but it's not something the examiners are testing. And then the last question that I've got substantively today, students said, I'm finding it really confusing to calculate contributions and damage questions. Is there somewhere where I could read more about doing those problems, or I could practice specifically this type of question? I have a couple of suggestions for you. First of all, we do have a deep dive that we did about contributory negligence and comparative negligence. You'll find it in your torts unit at the bottom. It's optional, and I would encourage you to look at it. We go through, do a mind map, we do some sample MBE questions, so that's a good course for that. And we did it because we know there is that confusion that comes up around comparative and contributory negligence. The other thing you can do, which is really fun when you've got digital materials, is just go into the digital books. You'll find those in your digital library. Open up the book that's got crim law in it, and then just do a word search for contributory negligence or comparative negligence or contribution or damages. And you'll see where it comes up in the outline. And you can do the same thing in the questions to find questions that have that particular language in them. And that's a good way to work through those and be able to figure them out. As to the advice for analyzing this kind of a question, what I want to do is jump in to that section and actually show you the question. And there we go. And give you this question, and then let's talk about it for just a minute and see where we go with it. This is what was causing the problem for a student. So I'm just going to read it to you. Crossing a busy street at night, Walker failed to look before crossing and failed to use a clearly marked crosswalk 50 feet away. The place where Walker crossed should have been brightly lit, but it was dark because Fairfax County negligently failed to replace a streetlight despite several notifications from local citizens. Walker was struck while crossing by driver who was exceeding the speed limit. Walker sued driver and county in State X where the accident occurred. State X has a pure comparative negligence statute and provides for both for joint and several liability of joint tortfeasors and for contribution among joint tortfeasors based upon comparative fault. Now that paragraph's really important. It's got a lot of information, so don't gloss over it. You're going to come back and use it. Then we're told that the jury has determined that Walker suffered $200,000 in damages, Walker's 40% at fault, county's 10% at fault, and driver's 50% at fault. So now we have all of the numbers built in, and the examiners aren't really terribly interested in you doing math. This is fairly easy math, as you'll see in a minute. All right, so now the call to the question. What's the amount of damages for which county is liable? So not everybody, but just county. So now the first thing you really want to do here, before you look at the answer choices, is really just to ask yourself, what's going on here? And how would we get to what the county is liable for? First of all, we know that the county is going to be liable because there's joint and several liability, and there's contribution among joint tortfeasors. So when we take that into account, and we know that it's a comparative negligence statute, we know that the county being 10% at fault doesn't mean that they're only liable for $20,000 because they're joint and several liabilities. So they're responsible for everything. So what is the everything from the defendants? In this situation, we're told that Walker's got 40% at fault. So that means 80,000 of the damages are his responsibility, if you will. So that leaves us with 120,000. So right away, I'm going to say county is responsible for $120,000 because it's joint and several liabilities. So you don't have to get super complicated. It's pretty straightforward. All right. So with that in mind, let's look at our answer choices. Answer choice A said nothing because Walker was more negligent than county. B said 20,000 because county was 10% negligent. C, 120,000, but the county can collect 100,000 from driver if it pays the entire amount. So they're now throwing a twist into this answer choice. And then D is 120,000, but county can collect 60,000 from driver if it pays the entire amount. All right. So how do we deal with that? Remember, I said that I thought that county had to pay 120,000. So I'm looking at answer choices C and D. I'm just going to eliminate A and B right off the top. Now we'll talk in a minute about why they're incorrect answers. But now as I compare, now I'm getting down to these two answer choices, and I have to do one more step because they've added a qualifier that I didn't know was coming. So 120,000 we agree is county's responsibility is joint and several. what can they collect from the driver if they were paying the entire amount? When we go back, driver's 50% at fault, 50% of 200,000 is 100. That looks like the right answer to me. All right. But I can do a quick check on this. D says 120,000, but county can collect 60,000 from driver. All right. Driver was 50% at fault. That's 100,000. I don't know where they get the 60,000 from. So that doesn't look like the right answer to me. So having said that, let's look at the explanation. And we find out that, in fact, in this situation, C was the correct answer. As to problem answer A, which said that there was nothing that was available because Walker was more negligent than county, an injured person can recover even if they're more at fault than the persons that they're suing. But the amount that they can recover is reduced by the percentage of the negligence that's attributable to them. So in this case, Walker was responsible for 40%. So Walker is entitled to collect really only 60% of the judgment, or $120,000 from the defendants. Doesn't matter that Walker was more negligent than county. That's a red herring, and you should have ignored it from the beginning. Answer choice B said it's 20,000 because the county was 10% negligence. We've already indicated that what that would be is a misreading of the fact pattern because there's joint and several liability. And then we get to the explanation of the 120,000 and the 100,000, which I've just gone through with you. So that's the explanation of the question. I think that where people get freaked out is they see numbers and they think, oh my gosh, I got to do math. But really, if you break it down simply, it's not all that difficult. So there you go. Hope that explains that a little bit better. And again, if you're struggling with this particular concept, check out the supplement that we did on comparative and contributory negligence, and then just do a word search for these questions and you can find them and dig into all of those sections. All right. I see one last question here. These are always dangerous when I do these AMAs because, people ask me substantive stuff. Can you please explain why double jeopardy would not apply when you've got transferred intent? Oh, we're going back to the attempted murder and the actual homicide. It's not double jeopardy because you're being charged with two different crimes. It's no different than any other situation which you have an underlying charge. Double jeopardy is when you're being tried twice in two separate trials for the same thing. So not a double jeopardy problem at all here. It's just an underlying charge. Okay. Good. That scared me. I didn't know what was coming there. All right. So that's what I've got. I hope that's helpful. Next week, we will be back and we will be waiting on California results breathlessly, just a few days away. June will return and she will be here to help, and we'll be talking about mindset as well. So if you've got questions during the week, reach out and let us know. You can post your questions in our community group. You can email them to us and we will get back to you. If you're in the coaching programs, I encourage you to start doing your writing and sending it in so we can talk about it, and encourage all of you to get into the group coaching calls as well. Hope everybody has a good study week. Thank you all for being here today, and hope that these questions and answers are helpful to you. As we go along, we'll continue to do more of that. And dive into your studies, jump in. Even though it feels like February is a long way away, trust me, it'll be here before you know it. Don't hesitate, don't wait, get your 20 hours in, and we will see you again next week. Thanks everybody for being here. Take care, have a good study week. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening and watching the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at celebrationbarreview.com.